Good morning, Mashi.
Good evening, Dennis.
Overcome some technical difficulties today, but they won't be included in this necessarily. That's all right.
Is this our third? Is this our first time having 3 takes?
I think so. It certainly feels like that's going to be the case.
I'm almost certain that it is the case. So, all right, I'm going back to the well here to anime, to one of my favorite animes of all time.
Okay.
Little anime called Fairy Tail. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that.
I'm familiar. A guy I used to follow on Twitter voiced a character in it in the English dub a long time ago, but I've never seen it. I haven't seen a frame of it.
It's fun. I will say this for those of you who maybe are daunted by One Piece, you can kind of watch Fairy Tail, and there are, I will say, similarities between Natsu Dragon Eel, the protagonist for One Piece, and Monkey D. Luffy, the protagonist in One Piece, and Fairy Tail is Natsu. But he has a quote that's really, really good, and a lot of it's about guts, and family and friends. Nakama is what we say in Japanese, and he has a quote that about striving and really sticking to what you're working on, motivation, that kind of thing. And it's the moment you think about giving up, remember why you tried this hard for so long.
Oh, it's kind of an anti-sunk cost fallacy deal, right? I agree. I mean, I think I agree with that quote overall. Like, sunk cost fallacy doesn't really apply to like life goals really in the same way. Especially like longer term goals. Like if you're trying to change the kind of quote unquote person you are or the kind of person you want to be, those are sustained long-term over time changes. And it is very easy to lose sight of the bigger path and the progress. And in moments of weakness, like you said, go, oh, God, no, I want to keep doing this. And in those times, I think it is very important to be like, okay, well, think about why you started and think about how far you've come and things like that.
I love where you've gone with this because it's exactly where I went with this, and I've always gone with this. And to be honest with you, when you're in an anime or a manga that's all about fighting and overcoming bad guys, it's where you go with it. But when we take a step back and think about it, and the beautiful thing about quotes, and something I've really learned with this podcast actually, is the author can only take you so far. You've got to follow it off with what you mean and what you think, and what Denis Stranjak means versus what Mashi Scanlan means versus what the millions and millions of our audience members take it to mean is totally different. And I think what's important about Natsu's quote here is it is important to sit there when you're about to give up and remember why you tried so hard for so long, but that doesn't mean you keep going. And I think that there's a huge part of us that listens to that quote, that hears it and says, yeah, and that's why you push on. That's not what it means. It means you sit there and ask yourself, why did you hold on this hard for so long? And I think in a lot of cases, it will be, this is why, and let's push forward. I'm re-energized.
But you're right. The gut is not to think of, actually, it's not worth it anymore, or my priorities have changed. That does not come into your mind as a potential answer to that question.
Right. There's a great I think it's Thomas More in his book Utopia.
Which anime is Thomas More from? Actually, is he from?
So Thomas More's favorite quote or favorite action when he was get beheaded. Do you know this? No. He put his head on the block, and his beard was under him on the block. Mm-hmm. And they asked him if he had any, and they're about to cut his head off, and he says, "Excuse me a moment." Lifts his head up, pulls his beard out, and sets it down so the beheading doesn't ruin his beard.
Good. I like that.
That man had big brass ones. I'm just telling you. I mean, if you're going to go out, go out. You had Arthur Miller. That reminds me of Giles Corey. I don't know if you remember this line when he's getting crushed to death by stone. And he says, his last words are more weight. If you're going to go. But Sir Thomas More in Utopia, I don't know if you recall this, Raphael Hifliday is the tourist, the going through Utopia. And one of the things that Sir Thomas More clearly can't abide, it's this nonsensical reason, and he says it's almost like the last refuge of a scoundrel, which we say is patriotism. Is one of the things that people say when there's a nonsensical reason for doing something is, well, Dennis, that's how my father did it, and my father's father did it, and his father, and by God, if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And it obviously is taking to the extreme, this idea of we've done it for so long, we're just going to keep doing it that way. And that's the other side of it, right? And that's and where I think a lot of times in our lives we do need to step back and become an observer of ourselves. We need to step back from the purely subjective mode of this game that we play and go into third person mode where we can kind of objectively step back and see what we look like.
Something I find useful for that is I try and think, if I'm struggling with a problem in my personal life, let's say, for example, I try and think what advice I would give if a friend of mine came to me and was like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. What would I do? And
that's even a great.
Even entering into that exercise is very, very difficult to try and like separate yourself a little bit. And it's kind of the inverse of what you said. It's like, well, if I would give that advice to somebody else, why am I incapable of giving it to myself? Right. You don't have to follow it to the letter, but this whole thing of like, well, I do this thing because I've always done it, or this is the way things are, and I've started and I will finish. And at no point, and that's not the way anything in the real world works. Like even in business, if you have big projects, you have milestones where you check and you rescope and you change things and you move deadlines and you move targets and you adjust visions and all this kind of stuff. And that's true on a personal level too. And I know you're one for over documenting your thoughts, I would say. I think you're a little further than the average person probably needs to be, but I think most people have a lot more ground to gain than you have to give.
Yeah, I think it's important to write things down because permanence is important with our thoughts, because we are ephemeral and our minds are ephemeral. And when you write something down in your brain, you've written it in water, and the tide changes and it's gone. And that's certainly in my brain, because I jump around a lot. The key with what you said too, I think, is when you have intrusive thoughts, or really when you're berating yourself for a mistake. When you're berating yourself for a mistake, if I'm the thing that I find helpful is, okay, if Dennis made this mistake, what would I say to him? But I was like, you fucking idiot. How could you fucking do that? It's so fucking stupid, No, I would never do that. So how would I talk?
You are your own harshest critic. And that's a powerful quality, right? It lets you hone yourself and try and improve, but you hit diminishing returns on that critical feedback very, very quickly.
And you
far before anybody does. And that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because you will yell at yourself for hours at night at 3 a.m. and not sleep. You would never do that to a friend. You would never call someone up at 3 a.m. and say, and another thing, Dennis, how could you effing do this? That doesn't happen. But I think we are creatures of habit, and like all good things, they can be harnessed for ill, and we can fall into bad habits. And this quote speaks so differently to me now. I've gone through a lot of changes in my life, as you know, Dennis. And I was on autopilot with so much of my life. And when you're on autopilot, you're not living. You aren't really, you think you're the subject, you think you're the hero, but you've become a bystander in your own life. And I think it's so important to ask yourself why you are doing things. And when you check in and realize that the answer is, oh, I haven't really thought about it, and I've just been doing it this way for a long time, that ain't the answer you're looking for, baby. And I think it's important to check in on those. Now, when you're goal oriented and you're going through something, you have to ask yourself whether the goal is still worth it,
or if it has to take a back seat, or sit on the back burner for a little bit. Like I've done that plenty of times in my life where I'm like, look, there's this thing I'm striving towards, but there's something else that just requires my attention more for the next month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is.
And the path can change. I was an attorney. And I was making good money as an attorney, and I had an opportunity to leave that job and rejoin Superstars of Sports Inc. Back in 2013. And there's one idea where it's like, well, I wanted financial prosperity. That was certainly my goal, financial independence. And a lot of people might say, well, then stick with the attorney job, dude. Don't go into the gaming industry. What path is going to take you there? And you could see a very real scenario where it's like, you know what? I got bills to pay, man. I gotta stick to this law thing. There's a lot of upside here. I'm kind of at the infancy of my career. I think I can grow and make a lot of money and do it. And that's probably true. I probably could have, but I didn't. I chose this path, which I think rewarded me and probably got me further along faster than being an attorney did, mainly because of the lifestyle changes I went through. But all roads may lead to Rome. But you have to ask yourself what goal you have and why you are doing it. And when you're about to change, and again, we always interpret these quotes as don't give up. Maybe it's time to let this one go or to choose a different path. Not necessarily give up on the goal, but also ask yourself why you have that goal. Is your goal just to subsist and make it day to day? I'm just trying to get to Friday. That's not a great goal, man. The goal should be to stop that mindset, right? Find a way to say, man, I just need to get through if it's just get through Wednesday or get through the day, or hey, no, I have a goal of like just being, and it's great.
Well, you said we talked a little bit before about doing things and having the journey be part of the reward for it and part of the goal. And if you try and characterize things that way, it's much easier to quit 60, 40, 70, whatever percent of the way through and still feel like you've achieved something. Right. Mm-hmm. Being goal oriented is dangerous because it makes failure very, very like powerful. You give a lot of power to not achieving those goals. If you can try and reframe things as you know, making progress along the way and dedicating time and energy to it as part of the goal, then when you sit there and you go, is this something I really want to do? You'll feel a lot less guilty, and there's a lot less sort of self-flagellation if you go, actually, no, I don't think I do. I think I want to do something else.
Yeah. And I think you've touched on one of the big learnings I've had recently, which is because I the feedback I have gotten is I'm a very goal-oriented person. It's true. I'm a very goal-oriented. It is like, and to the point where I'm like, sometimes I want to know what I'm doing this weekend because my week is slowing down on me a little bit, or it's bogging me down. I'm like, dude, I can't wait to kick my feet up and have a beer with Dennis, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's a goal, right? Is it a massive life goal? No, but it's a weekend goal, and those are fine too, you know, or I can't wait to have dinner this Wednesday with Claire, or whatever it is, you know? And I think that when we put too much emphasis on the ends, we stop to value the means, and really the journey. The fact is, when we are striving for a goal, reaching that goal is a moment, one small moment, but every step on that journey is so many moments. And if we value that one goal so much that we overlook all the moments that we took there, we're not really living a life, right? We're being very incomplete in how we engage our daily life. And that isn't where we want to be. I think we want to be every day kind of check in and going, this is great, or this is tough, but you know, but I do have this goal, and I feel rewarded because I'm moving towards it. But I have to acknowledge the means. Otherwise, you are a passenger for a long time in your life. You get one stop, you get off, and you go, oh my God, this is great. But when you're very goal oriented, you get a goal, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, what's that bus stop over there? I want to get to that one. And then you're back on the bus again, and you're not paying attention anymore. And that's not where we want to be. Ask yourself why you fought so hard for so long. Remember why you tried so hard for so long. That doesn't mean you stay on the bus. Maybe it means you go take a walk for a bit because you need it, or really that's what you wanted. Sometimes all you want is financial freedom and peace, and yet all you're doing is work, and not experiencing any of the freedoms and peace that the success you've already generated.
That's an interesting one. And we can end on this thought. This idea, like you mentioned, like, you know, being an attorney in the past, like, and how it would have netted you a lot more money probably a lot earlier. But the lifestyle that came with it was not something you wanted. And what would that financial prosperity have been for, if not to fund a lifestyle? Right.
Yeah.
And if earning it precludes you from that lifestyle, then it's not worth it.
What are you doing? You're saving up for, I mean, I want to enjoy my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. I don't want to sit there and say, well, I did all this hard work and now I'm 68 or 70 and now I can enjoy it. Yeah. Saw that.
Well, look, Mashi, I hope you go into your day and you assess your goals, and maybe, where appropriate, decide to change them.
Same, Dennis. I hope every move is a move towards a goal. Just make sure it's the goal you want.
Have a great morning.
Have a great evening.